audio capture device. Sorry, folks, I just gotta make sure the audio is working. I don't think I have any audio. Oh, you know what? I muted. Oh, that's that one.
Nineveh is still in the bad book.
Oh, let's try default. Well, Mr. Wall.
Where's the throat lines?
They are not here tonight.
They can drive over to the farm.
Yes, because the kids are here.
Because they're in the hangar.
Oh,
Pretty
yeah.
much reassembled an airplane after they left.
Oh, hi, Sierra.
These boys were wild.
I can only see this far with these, but now I can see everything, so. All right. Wow, that guy's balding. Look at that.
Ah, come on.
It shows wisdom.
Dylan, could you check and see if we have any audio? I don't know if I have audio on here. Okay, video, no problems.
Yep.
Okay, audio's working?
You're looking at your bald spot.
Okay, good. Yep. All right.
How much snow did you get?
Oh, about a foot.
Yeah, it's on there.
I wish we had got that much. Now it melts away.
Oh, ugly all the time.
I said to Larry the other day, well, are you guys going to see this? He goes, no, it's too cold.
Yeah, it's gonna be minus.
Nobody made coffee.
Oh, is it? Everybody. Oh, my. They had more snow in Minnesota.
Yeah, I will.
I was going to get more than that today.
Oh, there we go.
I phoned Elam and it was good to have more snow there. It was good to have less rain. It was slushy in the city and I said, no, I don't have to.
I don't know what's it's gonna blow up.
What's the word that too? Can you sleep today?
Only you would come home today.
Oh, she did. Because I was thinking of her, I thought, I wonder if she's home, because we said the road was bad.
Back and forth.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it was on the Facebook, I did a yellow, I was off
I
last.
did back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to see the people.
Well, we're kind of in the hole.
I know.
We're in the hole.
I know, it goes around us.
Then last time I was there, I said, I saw.
Ah, there is, what did Bonnie say here? There is,
It's the bone. There you go.
there is audio and video. Oh, good. Thanks, Bonnie. All right. Once the walls join us, and I'll include Sierra in that comment. This tonight's lesson is actually because Henry asked a question. And oftentimes when someone asks a question like tonight with Shelley and Myrtle, that leads to the best discussions about where we're going, what we're doing. So this is, I know Henry's not here, but this is courtesy of Henry. And Henry asked the question, how did Assyria fall? What happened to them? So tonight we're going to do kind of two things. We're going to read the text from Nahum about the fall of Assyria. Then we're going to actually do the story, and I know Myrtle just loves story time. I did the crafts ahead of time for you so you don't have to do them. Save you the effort, because I just know Myrtle loves when I do crafts, so we will do that. All right, so if you have your Bibles, if you're watching us online, and those of us who are here, turn to the book of Nahum. We're going to read a good chunk. We're going to read 2 chapters. So if you need a glass of water, Now is a good time. And if you're watching us, this video behind me is just videos of the North African desert, because we're going to talk a lot about North Africa and the Middle East and all that kind of stuff tonight. So I couldn't find any videos of Assyrians being slaughtered. So I thought that would have been inappropriate anyways. And, yeah, just as well. Yeah. All right. We're going to read chapter 2 and 3. And why don't we read, let's do each 2 verses each. Doug, you want some water?
No?
Oh. Well, no, I got mine. I just thought you were getting up to get some.
No, I'm just moving closer here.
Gotcha. All right. You're moving down one, Dylan, I guess. The whole crew, the whole fam is moving down one. All right. So, Nahum, chapter 2 and 3. We're going to read those. It's about 2 pages, 2 verses each. And Harlan, you want to kick us off with the first 2 verses of Nahum chapter 2, 1 and 2, and then 2, and then 3 and 4, and 5 and 6, and we can all count by 2, hopefully?
Yeah, try.
All right.
Nineveh, you are finished. You are already surrounded by enemy's armies. Sound the alarm. Man the ramparts. Muster your defenses full force, and keep a sharp watch for the enemy attack to begin. The land of the people of God lies empty and broken after your attacks, but the Lord will restore their honor and power again.
God will restore your power. It sounds like a Maple Creek reference, but anyhow. Shelley.
The shields of his soldiers are red, the warriors are clad in scarlet. The metal on the chariots flashes on the day they are made ready. The spears of fire are brandished. The chariots storm through the streets, rushing back and forth through the squares. They look like flaming torches. They dart about like lightning.
He summons his picked troops, yet they stumble on their way. They dash through the city wall. The protective shield is put in place. The river gates are thrown open and the palace collapses.
It is decreed that the city be exiled and carried away. Its slave girls moan like doves and beat upon their breasts. Nineveh is like a pool, and its water is draining away. Stop, stop, they cry, but no one turns back.
Move the silver, plunder the gold. There's no end to Nineveh's treasures, its vast, uncounted wealth. Soon the city is plundered, empty and ruined. Hearts melt and knees shake. The people stand aghast, their faces pale and trembling.
Where now is the lion's den, the place where they fed their young, where the lion and lioness went, and the cubs with nothing to fear? The lion killed enough for his cubs, and strangled the prey for his mate, filling his lairs with the kill and his dens with the prey.
I am against you, declares the Lord Almighty. I will burn up your chariots in smoke, and the sword will devour your youth, your young lions. I will leave you no prey on earth. The voices of your messengers will no longer be heard.
I may as well read verses 1 and 2, Dylan, 2 in the next chapter.
Woe to the city of blood, full of lies, full of plunder, never without victims. The crack of whips, the clatter of wheels, galloping horses, and jolting chariots.
Horsemen charging, swords flashing, spears gleaming, many slain, a mass of corpses, and countless dead bodies. They stumble over the dead bodies, all because of the many harlotries of the harlot, the charming one, the mistress of sorceries, who sells nations by her harlotries and families by her sorceries. 5 and 6, Harlan.
No wonder I stand against you, says the Lord of hosts. And now all the earth will see your nakedness and shame. I will cover you with filth and show the world how really vile you are.
All who see you will flee from and say, Nineveh is in ruins. Who will mourn for her? Where can I find anyone to comfort you? Are you better than Thebes, situated on the Nile with water around her? The river was her defense, the waters her wall.
Cussia and Egypt were her boundless strength. Put and Libya were among her allies. Yet she was taken captive and went into exile. Her infants were dashed to pieces at the head of every street. Lots were cast for her nobles, and all her great men were put to chains, or put in chains.
You too will become drunk. You will go into hiding and seek refuge from the enemy. All your fortresses are like fig trees with their first ripe fruit. When they are shaken, the figs fall into the mouth of the eater.
and helpless as women. The gates of your land will be opened wide to the enemy and set on fire and burned. Be ready for the siege, store up water, strengthen the defenses. Go into the pits to trample clay and pack it into molds, making bricks to repair the walls.
There the fire will consume you. The sword will cut you down. They will devour you like a swarm of locusts. Multiply like grasshoppers, multiply like locusts. You have increased the number of your merchants, till they are more numerous than the stars in the sky, but like locusts they strip the land and wipe all away.
Your guards are like locusts, your officials like swarms of locusts that settle in your walls on a cold day. But when the sun appears, they fly away, and no one knows where. O king of Assyria, your shepherds slumber, your nobles lie down to rest. Your people are scattered on the mountains with no one to gather them. Nothing can heal your wound, your injury is fatal. Everyone who hears the news about you claps his hands at your fall. For who has not felt your endless cruelty?
Woo! There we go. Thank you for reading, everyone. And all right, so anything jump off the page as you read that? Anything you went,
Those last two lines, they clap at your fall.
yeah, it's like, they're dead. Yay.
This is true.
Anything else kind of jump off the page?
Her infants were dashed to pieces.
Yeah, they killed their children. Yeah. Spoken like a mom. Anything else?
It just seemed to wiped out everything.
Yeah, it's a complete and total desolation, isn't it? Yeah, destruction. Yeah.
Grasshopper ate 'em.
Yeah, and they're described like grasshoppers
Yeah.
hiding in the walls, and then when the sun comes, they come out and flee. So the nobles are hiding, right? And then when the enemy comes, the sun, they flee the city. It's an interesting metaphor, right? Because we've all seen that. Grasshoppers hide in the building, and then the sun comes up, or like these little maple bugs we have now. When the sun comes up, they come out. Yeah, it's all very picturesque and very poetic way of describing a horrific event. Anything else? Jump off the page. Well, then, what happened? Here we go. I was trying to think of the best way to teach you, because we have to do a history story about battles and kings and locations and all kinds of things, and it's hard to do without having something to help you see. So, Shelley, you wouldn't mind taking one and passing it on? And then I actually have to go get my real notes. I'll be right back while you have those. If you're online with us, those are all available on PDFs for you today.
Oh, that's what it
For a pencil. Or the pencil, please.
No, that's not working.
All right, so what do you have here? Take your little clip off, and you will see the first little pile is 12 angry kings. So we're going to put some names on it. There should be 12 of these angry-looking kings there. Then you have two piles of soldiers, one facing one way and the other facing the other way. There should be 6 of each. Whoops. I got them. Yeah, they're off, but they're facing there. You have to make the sound effect when you do that.
That's it.
Then you have a big chart that says battles and cities, and these are the names of all the places. So we have the Assyrian Empire with the city of Nineveh, Babylon with the city of Nippur and Uruk, then Elam, the Caucasus, Anatolia, southern Anatolia, Judah with the city of Ashkelon. Then we have the northern Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Medes, Asher, Haran, and Carchemish. So those are all the names of the towns. So hold that one in your breath. And then we have the names of all the armies and kings. So we have Ashpernabapal, Ashtartal, that's a long one. His brother is Singshering, this guy, and this guy, this dude is the same as this dude. And then the Sumerians, the Scythians, the Medes, the Egyptians, and Judah, Joash. So your first project is to put the name of the kings on the piece of paper with the picture of a king. So on one piece of paper, you want to write the name Ashban, no, I'm glad we didn't have to read these. Ashburnpal, we're just going to call him Asher, and then you're going to put Asher to this guy, and then
Assyrian
Sinsharkun.
Empire.
What's that?
Assyrian Empire.
Yes, these are all members of the kings of the Assyrian Empire. So on that way you'll have a king with his name on it. Make sense? So you want to put the name of the king on a piece of paper. Then you want to put, you don't have to write him, he shows up again. But Nabopolassar, Nebuchadnezzar II, Syraxes, we already got Syraxes later on, he shows up. And then the Cimmerians, the Scythians, Pherotes, Syraxes, don't worry about her, she hopes she can show up later. And then Psamtik the first, Necho the second, and Josiah. Make sense? So, put the names of the kings on the kings.
Okay.
Then, on the soldiers, the Assyrians, Elam, Caucasus, Anatolia, southern Anatolia, Judah, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Medes, and those names. Don't worry about Asher, Haran, and Carchemish. But those are the names of the places, or of the armies. So we're going to have kings and armies like little toy soldiers. Is this making any sense?
Okay, so the armies and kings we have.
Kings go on the pictures of the kings, and the names of the armies go on the soldiers. Make sense, Joni? Doug, make sense? So, I'll walk you through it one more time.
Slower, Dan.
Slower.
Just wait till we get to theme stuff.
All right.
What's wild?
Sevens. That's right. So, on one piece of paper, you should have the name.
So is it,
Ashurbanipal.
That's right. So this becomes, we're assigning identities. This becomes King Ashurbanipal. Boom. This becomes King Ashur-Tlalalaniai. This becomes,
Sinsharkinchan.
you betcha, Sinsharkinson.
And then the second,
You're on the track.
then his brother.
This becomes his brother, Ashur-Ublak II, his brother. Don't worry about that being his brother, just so he'll help you later on.
Those are kings.
This one is Nabopolassar,
Why not Sinsharkin?
because he's the same dude as above.
Okay.
Yeah, you got him already on there. But he gets involved in Babylon later on. And then you get the son of Nabopolassar, just right, son. And then they get Nebuchadnezzar II. Then you get the Cimmerians, the Scythians, Pherotes, Syraxes, who is don't worry about him, and don't worry about his daughter. Sorry to say she doesn't get her own card. And then you should have enough for Psamtik and Necho. I don't think I have one for Judah. I think there's 13 here, so I got to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, don't worry about the Cimmerians and the Scythians. They're people unto themselves, not kings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yep. So these four, that's 8, 9, 10, 9, 10, 11, 12. Medes, Egyptians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. We're all tracking? Myrtle, you got it? Median kings, Babylonian kings, Assyrian kings, Babylonian kings, Median kings, and Egyptian kings. So you have one little character, or one little guy, for each of those 12 kings.
So this one is a son of Nabopolassar and son-in-law of Syraxes. Is that a guy? Or
Yeah, that's a guy. Just call him son.
son-in-law.
Yeah, he's the son-in-law. He'll show up later on. Then for armies, so we got our 12 kings labeled. How's it coming?
Oh, they're coming.
This is going to help you immensely once we start talking about this. To have a visual, otherwise it's just going to be like me reading.
Dungeons and Dragons or something.
Yeah, because if I just read it without the little cards, you're going to go, who did what, went where, who, what, who, not.
What?
So this will help you immensely. I'm hoping.
Okay.
So he promises. He keeps making promises. Then, okay, so we've got our 12. Myrtle, we got 12 kings written down. Doug, how's it going? 12 kings?
I don't know. Easy.
What's that? Okay, you don't ask me no questions, I'll tell you no lies.
That's right.
Shelley, got your 12 kings?
I do.
Good. Shelley's got 12. Follow Shelley's lead. She's got her 12 kings. Doug's got his 12 kings. Give you another minute to do that, or two. Also, it doesn't help that their names have 27 letters in them.
And then we can't pronounce them.
Yeah, and we can, that's right, and we cannot pronounce them on top of that.
If they're Joe, then, you know.
Yeah, George, Edward, Henry. Frank would have got, King Frank would help, but Ashurbanipal is a bit of a tongue twister. I'll do the best I can. My grasp of ancient names is not good either, so you're not alone.
We just give them nicknames or something?
You can give nicknames if you want to. And just keep them nice in order.
Was,
Oh, in order?
Well, it doesn't matter. As long as they're in front of you, as long as you can see them.
where's the time you?
I was gonna say, do they have to be in order? Then you ask for more.
Well, I didn't say this was like a passive evening. This isn't like television. You actually have to engage.
Oh, man. Yeah, I like sitting in my,
Yeah.
Is that number we're looking
Yeah.
at?
Yeah, okay, so then 11.
you guys, I got 12, I don't know.
You should have 12, yeah. Should be 12 kings.
Who's the 12th one, Josiah?
No.
The one that's a double. It says same.
Oh, yeah, 12. Yeah, they're
There's
right.
11.
Yeah, 11. Yeah, you're right. There should be, oh yeah, I forgot he's a double. Yeah, then add Josiah. That makes it 12.
The who?
Josiah, king of Judah.
Oh, yeah, oops,
That'll give you 12.
Josiah. Oh, I didn't do Josiah.
He's the last. He'll come up. He only comes up twice in the story. So, okay. So, you got your kings. Now, on your little army dudes, you got little armies. So you want to have the Assyrian army represented. Like this is like 50,000 guys. So now we're going to name the armies. So now these are your army men. So these are like your kings, and these are like your army men. So on one army man, write Assyria, although these are Greeks in the picture, but we're not too persnickety on history tonight. This is the Assyrian army. Dun, 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 dun. Assyrian army. Dude 1. And in opposition to him, like with a spear in the other direction,
Oh, there's 2 directions.
they're left and right because they're facing off.
This is very important.
I know. But facing off against him are the Babylonian. So Assyrian army going one way, just like Mr. Bean. The Babylonian army going the other way. That way when you set them up, it's more fun. You're not stabbing each other in the back.
More funner.
You're fighting in the front.
Okay, which one is opposite the Syrians?
Babylonians.
Babylon.
Okay, so you want the Assyrians against the Babylonians. And you want the Egyptians on the same side as the Assyrians, because they're their allies. So the Assyrians and the Egyptians are going to be allies.
You spell it however you want.
You can do whatever you want. And the Medes and the Babylonians are the same team. The rest of it doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want. But just those 4, it's not really critical, but it'll make it more interesting. And it'll help you see it.
And what do we do with the rest?
Then the rest you can do Elam, Caucasus, Anatolia, southern Anatolia, Judah, the Medes, and those dudes.
Egyptians and Assyrians. No, it's like that.
Hey, Michael Johnson said hi. Hello, Mike.
Yeah.
Judah is one,
Yes, Judah is one as well.
The rest of
and it
them-
doesn't matter which side he's on.
No, he doesn't last long.
And who else do we put down?
So the Egyptians and the Assyrians should be on the same, facing the same way. If this was a chess set, they'd be on the same side.
Babylon?
And the Babylonians and the Egyptians, the Babylonians and the Medes. My mistake. These are little names of towns, by the way. Nippur, Uruk,
Like that?
Haran, Carchemish. I could have done this all ahead of time, but I thought, way more interesting if you do it.
You should have done one set.
Babylon and who?
Babylon and the Medes.
They're on one side.
They should be facing the same way, and the Assyrians and the Egyptians facing the same way. How you doing, Sierra? Making sense?
The rest don't matter, you said?
The rest, you can make them point their spears in the air for all you want.
They're
But
cousins, I guess.
there's some family shenanigans going on up ahead soon here. All right. Oh yeah, give you a minute to do that. And like Doug, all nicely laid out and organized. He's got his armies and his kings. He is ready to go. Doug is our example, and Doug and Shelley are our examples here.
What if Putin shows up?
He's a little farther north.
We're just gonna mess it up.
I'll kill you.
That's right. He would be north of the Caucasus Mountains, though. And today, if someone were to ask you, what race are you, you might say you are, or you might say you're Caucasian, which are the people of the Caucasus Mountains. So I'm not from the people of the Caucasus Mountains, unless any of you are from the Caucasus Mountains. We're not really Caucasians, but that's what we got called. You need more cards? We got more cards. All right. Okay. Kings, 12 kings, a bunch of toy soldiers on paper. All right, you're doing great. Then, one more element, you have some maps, because you can't have war games, which is what we're doing tonight, by the way. We're playing war games without a map. So I've given you two maps. The first map is real simple. It's this one with the big blur. Kind of cool how that does it on the screen. It kind of disappears, and then it gets thin, and then it's all over. And then when I do that, I go black and white. Wow,
Who's the dude behind you?
this guy on a camel.
Who's that?
Look, it's kind of cool though, because I just go like I got you. Sorry, anyhow. Yeah.
Two on the camera now.
Sorry, if I do this, then I go black and white. Isn't that wild? The camera just doesn't quite
Where's
catch
the
up.
camel?
He's gone.
Well,
All right, this is called the. Anybody know? What's that? This is called a map. This area is called the Middle East. Well, this, yeah, good, Middle East. The Capel Valley. This is the Fertile Crescent. Capel Valley. Random.
We got a file in here.
You know, this is the Fertile Crescent. Why? Because everything's green. So if you go through Egypt, and then this is the delta of the Nile where it floods every year, then you go along the coast. Israel was actually at one time a very fertile place, green and lush. And then you go up here. If you look, you're following a couple of famous rivers. Anybody know the name of the famous rivers that are on here? Euphrates and the...
South Saskatchewan.
And then, well, the Nile's down here. And the what?
South Saskatchewan.
South Saskatchewan. The Tigris and the Euphrates, which are way back in Genesis. The Swift Current Creek runs through here. The French River Valley. All right. So the big empires are all connected here and here. So Egypt's a powerhouse, and this is the Assyrian and the Babylonian empires, right? The powerhouses. So if you're the big powerhouse, and the rest is desert, uninhabitable, unimaginable, horrible desert, as our video shows. So if you're the big powerhouse and you want to go fight Egypt, where do you got to go? You got to follow the line of the Fertile Crescent. And what do you bump into? Little bitty Israel, always in the way, right? Because this big army is going to go, dunk, 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 dunk. And then they're going to go through here. And if you're this big army and you want to go attack your enemies, so Israel is, what do we call that politically? They're called a buffer state. But they're like Poland. They're,
Monkey in the middle.
yeah, the kid in the middle, exactly. They're always getting trapped in between these superpowers. All right, so that's kind of the lay of the land. Then we get the map that's going to help us tonight. This is a little more detail. Camel backside. All right, so on this map, want to hand me a pointer? Thanks, Sierra. Thank you very much. All right, so on this map we have Egypt. This is an Italian map, by the way. Egitto, Corsimi, Parti. It's all in Italian. I don't know why I got an Italian map, but I have an Italian map. So for some reason tonight it's Italian. Here is Jerusalem. All right, Lydia, Lycia. I don't know why, it's Sicilia. So this is an Italian map for some reason.
Okay, pull her together, fella.
Yeah, I got her, Doug. All right. So down here in Egypto, we have we have town names. Here's the Gaza Strip. You may know that from politics. Here's Jerusalem. Here's Tyre and Sidon and Biblios and Ardos. These are the towns along the coast. These are the towns where the Phoenicians and Goliath was what tribe? Goliath was a...
Oh, Goliath was a Philistine.
Thank you. The towns of the Philistines.
I was thinking Samson.
No, he was Israeli. He was a Jew. Yeah, these are all the towns of the Philistines along the coastline here, right? Here we get into modern-day Turkey. Here's Cappadocia. Here's Lydia. And then over here we get Media, Persia. We get more parts of Persia here. Aria. So these are the towns we're going to... Here's Nineveh, Arbel, and down we go. Babylon is not on this map. I mean...
Babylonia.
Oh, Babylonia, that's right. Yeah, sorry. Here we go. Here's Babylon, Nippur, Uruk, and Ur. So,
Where's Scepter?
well, you head west. Doug, you go west about 6,000 miles this way, and it's in the Fertile Crescent.
Scepter gets all right.
We're in the fertile slough bottom.
The Fertile Slough Bottom. So, places like Nippur, Ur, and Uk will come into play later on. All right, so you got your map and you got your soldiers. You ready? Give everybody time to collect their thoughts. So what we're going to do tonight is play a little. We're going to do some war games. I'm going to read you the story. Excuse me. Puberty again. I'm going to read you the story. I'm going to read you the story, and then I want you to reenact it with your characters. So imagine the table in front of you is this map. Okay, so get a visual picture. I don't want you to draw on the table. But get your armies ready. And then, as you can hold them up, I was going to make finger puppets out of them. But I thought that's more work. We don't have time for cutting and taping. Because we don't have time. We did that on Green Thursday. So, you could hold up your armies, go, oh, that's who fought that guy. And then, under that king. And hopefully this will help you visualize these great events. Rather than me sitting and reading... Can you imagine if I just read all these Egyptian and Assyrian kings' names to you? You'd go, who's that again? Who is that again? That way if you hold it up, you go, oh, that's that guy. Do you get my motivation by asking you to do all this? To help you, because I read this about 10 times, and I still went, I have no idea who these people are. Harlan, stay with Shelley, hold her hand, strap in, you'll be good.
Hold the kings.
You can hold the kings. Yeah, you can be one army, and you guys, you two can fight it out. Hey, that would work.
Oh boy.
Yeah, okay. Okay, you guys can sort out, Doug and Sierra, you can be like on the opposite. You can be like the Egyptians and the Assyrians. You can be the Babylonians and the Medes, and then you can be the referee. You know what? You can be King Josiah of Jerusalem. He plays a critical role. Sadly gets killed. All right, strap in. Here we go. If you're online, I hope this makes sense, and I hope you're playing cutouts with us. All right, so I'm going to read like the narrator on all those good military history channels. Could it be that we found Caesar's gold? No, anybody watch Oak Island? Oak Island, you know. Could this be? All right, the Assyrian Empire, I'll help you out. Get good. Ruled through brutal military force. Don't worry, don't got that yet. So when it showed signs, am I on the right page? Yep, I got to make sure I'm on the right page. I am. Okay. So when it showed signs of instability and weakness, its enemies seized this is like a children's story, which is just horrific. Seized its opportunity. A coalition of rebels and other Mesopotamian kings rose up and attacked the Assyrian Empire. Don't do anything yet, you're good? This resulted in probably one of the largest wars ever fought in the ancient Near East. And it happened over the course of 20 years. The events we're about to describe occur over 20 years. In 631 BC, the great king of the Assyrian Empire, Ashurbanipal. The first. You got him?
He's got the pal at the end.
Ashurbanipal.
He's the guy that looks grumpy with the sword on his back and the shield at his side.
Yeah, so y'all got Ashurbanipal in your hand there? You're good?
So he's the king of Assyria?
He is the king of Assyria. He died.
Already?
You can kill him off. Of natural causes. He lived from 669 to 631. He was 38 years old, 38 years old when he died. He was a young dude.
COVID?
You just beat me.
Died, that's what my notes say. Died of CV-19. That's what the historian said. Natural causes. During his reign, the Assyrian Empire, which is the big empire here, and if you look on your map here, you can see the Assyrian Empire. This huge country. Expanded to its greatest extent. It was possibly the largest empire the world had ever seen, and its capital city of Nineveh was probably the largest city on earth. Okay, so the Syrian Empire is at its peak under who?
Ashurbanipal.
Very good, and he's
Dead.
dead. Excellent. So all that work for a guy who died in the first 2 minutes of the story.
Died of natural
Cause.
Hey, right here was dead.
All right, his son and successor, Ashur Tiliani. Now we got him. Talian, the more Italian kings, Ashur Taliani, was met with opposition when he ascended the throne. So what does opposition look like? Fighting. Opposition. A conspiracy of Assyrian generals and officials was crushed by him quickly. So he's crushing people. I crushed you. Yeah, the Assyrian, he's crushing them all. Good. During this brief civil war, several of the Assyrian Empire's vassal kings took the chance to exert independence and extend their territories. In particular, King Josiah of Judah. Myrtle?
Josiah. I don't have him.
That's you.
That's you, Myrtle. You got a king? You got a king?
Josiah.
You had one job.
You got one king?
I didn't name any.
There he is. You got him. Josiah of Judah. Good. Conquered the city of Ashdod. Look on your map. Where's Ashdod?
That's next to Prelate.
It's next to Prelate.
Is this in the Syrian Empire?
Is that on the English map? Or the
It's on the English
Italian
map. No, not the Italian map. Basically, just north there, up by, a little bit north. Because Jerusalem's not on. Oh yeah, Jerusalem's on there. Not very far north. All right. And settled some of the people in that region. Although Ashur Talani defeated the conspiracy of generals and officials launched against him, he did not rule the kingdom of Assyria for long. The evidence is unclear, but it appears that he faced a rebellion launched by his brother, Sin Sharishkun. You got a king? Hey! So the two of them are fighting now.
Which one? Oh, these two.
Yeah. Excellent. Good job, everybody. Good.
These are
Natural causes.
they both Assyrian?
They're Syrian, they're brothers.
And now they're fighting.
They're in civil war. Now,
Problems.
rarely in these stories will you hear the name of the mother. Why? And you'll hear they're brothers, but not blood brothers. Only half brothers.
Ah, there you go.
Because of so many wives, right? These kings had countless and nameless wives and concubines. So you'll hear of them as brothers trying to kill each other, but they're not blood brothers, only half brothers. So their mothers are going, "Yeah, get out there and kill, good moms. But they're protecting royal lines within their own matriarchal lineage, not the patriarchal lineage. They're fighting for those lines. All right. Ashur Talali was killed around 628 by his brother. So he dead.
Two down. You only
Good
got
down
two
with
left.
Miles.
2 down, 10 to go.
Time flies when you're killing kings.
That's right. All right. Shortly after Sin Sariskun, you got him?
Yep.
Ascended the throne of the Assyrian Empire, the vassal king, we don't know his name, he's not on your chart, of Babylon died. So don't worry, you don't have him. Hoping to secure an often rebellious region, Sin Sariskun had himself crowned as king of Babylon. And so if you look on your chart, you'll see under the Assyrian kings his name, and then under the Babylonian kings his name. So he became king of both Babylon and Assyria. Very powerful man. Sadly, though, he faced a fresh rebellion led by one of the generals of Babylon, which he crushed in a 3-month campaign. So he brings the Assyrian army and crushes the Babylonian rebels. We don't have a picture of it. We don't have a character for that. The Babylonians had never been content to merely play a part of the Assyrian Empire, had revolted numerous times in the past. With the Assyrians in disarray, and why are they in disarray? Civil war between brothers, right? There's all this civil war going on. And when your enemy is having a civil war, what do?
You go in and take over.
That's exactly it.
Divide and conquer.
Very good. The time was ripe for Babylon to assert its independence. So now we're free of the Assyrian Empire, and Shelley's right on. So in 626 BC, Babylonian king, ready? Nabopolassar. There you go. So now you've got the Assyrian king, Asinsarikon, and the Babylonian king, Nabopolassar. You got the two kings?
They're fighting.
They're fighting. Very good.
So they're from Assyria?
No, they are just two different countries. They are fighting each other now. Very good. Once Nabopolassar revolted, he captured the cities of Nippur. If you look on your map, there's Nippur, and Babylon, which is Babylonia, and Uruk. So if you look on your map, he takes over Uruk, Babylon, and Nisr. Why?
Right at the mouth of the river.
That's right at the mouth of the river, the center of the country, right? If you look on your map, you'll see rivers all joining together and beginning at the very heart. That's the heart of the country.
Fertile area.
That's exact. This is driven by wealth and power, right? The fertile part of the Fertile Crescent, right where the rivers would flood every year. So that's the cities you want. And you also want Ur. Why do you want Ur? Because it's a port. Yeah, very good. Once Nabopolassar revolted, he took Nippur, Babylon, and Uruk, and the Assyrians now, who are in control of this region, but an upstart has come and taken over the cities, they counterattack, but it fails. Nabopolassar had himself crowned king and restored Babylon to an independent Mesopotamian kingdom. So up until this point, the Assyrian Empire controlled the Babylonian Empire and put vassal kings under it. But because there was trouble brewing at home, as Shelley noted, what do? You rise up. And so Nabopolassar rises up. He and his army take the three major cities, the capital plus two other wealthy cities, and the Assyrians try and suppress it, but it doesn't work. And Babylon is now strong enough to fight the Assyrians. Are we tracking? Mm-hmm. Okay. Sinsgarin did not give up. For several years, he launched numerous campaigns to retake Babylon from Nabopolassar. So off they go again. They're fighting. Despite some success, by 622, the Assyrian campaign stalled as more cities rallied to Nabopolassar and rose in revolt. So they're getting support. This is good. All right. Now, Elam, do we have a little character we have king for Elam? No, we don't. All right. Elam, another kingdom. You got Elam? Very good. Is there a church called Elam?
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah, you should have an Elam in your mix. Yeah. Shelley, do you have an Elam?
I got him as a fighter.
You can have him as a fighter or a king, doesn't matter. You got him as a fighter? Good. All right, good. Elam was a vassal of the Assyrian Empire, and it stopped paying tribute to the Assyrians. At the same time, ready? This is why we have to have all these things, because it gets confusing. At the same time, a usurper had seized the Assyrian throne, forcing Sin-Sarakin to abandon that his advance that had resulted in the recapture of Ur. So now Sin-Sarakin has to run back home because somebody's trying to take the throne. This is like some bad movie, right? Like, all these players. All right. So the Assyrians are now involved. What do we call that when people are fighting at home? Civil war. So the Assyrians are back. They had just been, what's that? Marriage. Oh. So the Assyrians had just been strong enough to suppress the Babylonians, and the Babylonians fight back, and then there's a civil war at home, a usurper. So the Assyrian army flees Babylon to try and deal with problems at home. All right, this is making sense?
So Babylon won then?
Temporarily.
Oh.
We haven't got all the players on the table yet.
Yes, I do.
With the Assyrians once again mired in civil war, Nabopolassar was able to reverse the Assyrian gains and set about consolidating his rule. By 620 BC, Uruk was under his control, and his armies were advancing into northern Mesopotamia. So now he's got Uruk and and Babylon and Nippur, and he's starting to move north. So if this was a bigger map, you'd have the Babylonian army going, dum, 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 marching north
To Babylon.
to Babylon, to Assyria. They're going to take out the Assyrians. All right. With the Syrian Empire in disarray, along comes the Cimmerians and the Scythians. You got a figure for those?
No,
They should be these little soldiers.
I thought you told us nothing.
Do you have room for them?
What's their names again?
Cimmerians and Scythians.
Those are the ones that crossed it. Oh, those are the kings.
Oh yeah, you have them down as kings?
Yeah.
Okay, grab those two.
Well, I crossed them out because I needed room for Josiah and something else.
Well, you can just, Josiah is going to, I'll pretend those are those. Making sense? Got enough?
Just pretend.
Just pretend. You got Syrians and Scythians?
Sumerians and Scythians.
All right.
Crossed out.
I didn't make it up, man. They attack the Assyrian colonies, and they attack the Caucasus and Anatolia. So if you look on your map, way up in the Caucasus, way up there, they are attacking up in the north country here. Up by what's called that neighborhood up there, Corsamia. So they're attacking there. That really doesn't matter a whole lot. Having ravaged the Assyrian vassals of Caucasus and Anatolia, the Cimmerians and the Scythians now made their way south. The next to be hit were the Assyrian colonies that were in southern Anatolia and northern Mesopotamia. So way up here in the Median neighborhood. Now they were up here, now they're going to move back down, and they're going to attack down here.
So it's just a mess all over.
It's just a mess all, exactly.
The camel's gonna be tired.
Yes. The kingdom of Judah, Myrtle, was ravaged by these raiders. And they sacked the city of Ashkelon, which is on our map sort of there, which they had taken on the coast. Encountering little to no effective resistance, the Assyrians and the Scythians marched all the way to Egypt, where they looted with impunity before turning back. So what we have now, we have established empires. We have the Egyptians, the Babylonians, and the Assyrians, the three big players on the map. The Egyptians are keeping to themselves. They're happy doing their own thing, not bothering anybody, building power. The Assyrians had conquered the Babylonians, but when trouble brewed at home, civil war, the Babylonians were able to exert independence. Make sense? So when all the big dogs are fighting, what happens? They want a piece of the action. So along come the Cimmerians and the Scythians, who really are nobody. But because the major world powers are engaged in major conflicts, their chance to strike. And they're not out for territory. What are they out for? Wealth.
Yeah.
The leftovers. That's right. The leftovers. That's excellent. They are the hyenas of our story. Right? They don't care about the territory. They just want the leftovers. And so they go to the north, they attack for a while, they move into the northern Assyria, Mesopotamia, they head down. They're just following the Fertile Crescent, right? Raiding as they go, because they're nomadic people. Basically think of warriors on horseback and camel, and they're raiding as they go. So they raid into Babylon, they raid into Assyria, they raid into Judea, they take Ashkelon, they go all the way down into Egypt, and by going down into Egypt, who does that bring into the puzzle now? The Egyptians. The Egyptians were happy to stay home. We're good. But these crazy raiders got them stirred up. Fired up, exactly. So this brings the Egyptians into the equation. Is this making sense now? I know the little figures are kind of goofy, but is the story flowing with you? No. So, big powers control, Assyria's trying to control everything. But Babylonia breaks away. And in the midst of the chaos, two minor powers, they're not even powers, they're just raiders, cause all kinds of chaos, and then it brings the Egyptians into the game. All right.
You could do this with the Russians and Ukrainians.
And that will be our point in the end. This story is so familiar.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah. However, the very success of these raids proved to be the undoing of the Cimmerians and the Scythians, because who did they just poke now?
Oh,
The Egyptians, and they're not happy. You don't just mess with Egypt. Egypt's one of the great world powers, right? And the raiders returned. Many of their leaders were invited to a banquet by King Cyaxares. We got a Cyaxares? All right. So, what territories have the Scythians and the Cimmerians just raided? All through Media, right? The Median Empire. And so the king of Media, as they raid Egypt, they go, oh, the Egyptians are there, run away, run away. They run back into Media, and the king of Media says, come, thanks for hassling the Egyptians, appreciate your work, good work. Why don't you come have dinner with me?
Yeah.
And?
Kill them.
Ah, very good. Yes. Cyaxares slaughters them all and drives them back to to the steeps, to the northern territories where they came
I'm
from.
not related.
So these guys are toast.
They're toast.
Bad.
All right. So the minor players come down, they cause havoc, they get punished. We're not into Nahum yet, but we're getting close. The decline of the Assyrian power, along with these raids, were of great concern to who did they just poke? Egypt. Enter Psamtik the First. Up till now, Psamtik has let bygones be bygones and not worried about it. This is a foreign policy issue. The Assyrians and the Babylons, they're having their own thing. They haven't affected us, but you now woke up Egypt. Not a smart thing to do. Enter Egypt. Now, previously, Psamtik was one of several, don't worry about him, he was actually a vassal ruler. He gradually eliminated all his rivals, and he became the sole ruler of Egypt. And he waged war against the Cushite rulers, and he conquers all of Egypt. For Egypt now, Assyria was a useful ally. Against who? Babylon. If you look, Egypt's primary enemy is not going to be the Assyrians. It's going to be the Babylonians, because they're right next door. Right? They want to get rid of these guys. And the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So they're going to ally with the Assyrians, which will create a pinch. They'll have the Egyptian armies in the south, the Assyrian armies in the north, and they're going to crush the Babylonians. More, Doug, more crushing.
A lot of fighting going on.
Oh yeah, we're just getting started. Psamtik the First chose to come to the aid of Sin-Sharukun, that guy. So Sin-Sharukun and Psamtik are buddies now. They're one. You can hold them together. So in 616, he sent his army to assist the Assyrians against the war against the Babylonians. Make sense? The first joint campaign was a failure as the Egyptian army remained west of the Euphrates. If you look on your map, you'll see here on the Euphrates. So the Egyptian army will not cross the Euphrates River. They stay on the western side of the Euphrates.
On the north side.
West side. So this side, the west side. They won't. Here's the Euphrates.
Yep.
They won't cross. They'll come up here and they stay here on this side of. Sorry, Harlan. They stay on this side. And the Assyrians are pushed back even farther. And all right, we'll keep going. Finally, in 615 BC, the Assyrians are able to drive the Babylonians back out of Babylon, and they get their territory back. How y'all doing? We're almost done. Now we're close. During the reign of Ashur-banipal, now we got to go back a bit. Remember the guy from the very beginning of the story? We killed him off on the first day. The Assyrian Empire defeated the Medes and killed their king in battle. After this defeat, the Medes were overrun by the Scythians, and on it goes. But we're not going to worry about that. All right. So, in 615 BC, Cyaxares, we got him? He launched an invasion of the Assyrian Empire, which brought him to the banks of the Tigris. He's getting close. How are we doing for time?
Is he an Egyptian guy?
Yes. No, Cyaxares, he's a Median. Cyaxares is... Oh, no. Yeah, he's a Median, right here. He is the son of Pheretes. He's coming up. Now, Cyaxares had a sneak attack, and this put pressure on the Babylonians, who were pinned down by the Assyrians. So the armies are now trapped. It set the stage for the grand Babylonian push against the Assyria. Okay, we're getting near the end here. Okay, we're almost done.
Nobody's dead yet.
The deaths will going to start. Oh boy, I don't want to tie you down here. Okay, I'll read this quick. In 614 BC, don't worry about the date, the Medes attacked the city of Assur.
On the river.
right on the river, up there, up there. So the Medians are now moving south. They're going to attack Assur. So the Median army is here with the aid of the Egyptians to the south. Here, Syraxes and Nabopolassar met face to face. So the two allied coalitions, the Egyptian Assyrian armies, now meet face to face with the Babylonian and Median army.
Oh, the armies are.
Now the armies are coming. Very good, Shelley, exactly. Because what happened was Nabopolassar's son, Nebuchadnezzar II, married Syraxes the Egyptian's daughter. That combined the empire. So now these two empires are joined in marriage.
Is he a chocolate guy like Nebuchadnezzar first?
More of a VeggieTales reference there. They besieged Nineveh. Unfortunately, surviving records are sparse. We don't know how the city fell. However, it appears that fighting went street to street. This is how Nineveh fell. When the combined armies of the Egyptians and the Babylonians attacked. Sorry, I gotta get that straight.
That's just where the battle happened.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's how Nineveh fell. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up because we're losing time here. The siege lasted. Necho. All right. There we go. The Egyptian pharaoh Psamtik I died. We can kill him off. And he was succeeded by his son Necho II. After the fall of the city of Haran, Ashur-bulat II and Necho II attempted to retake it. That didn't work. They were unsuccessful, and Necho's army was held up by King Josiah of Judah. So his army couldn't get farther north like it needed to be to help out his allies. The Judeans were defeated, and Josiah was slain. Those records we have in Scripture. This delay prevented the Egyptians and the Assyrians from recapturing the city of Haran, which is here. So what happened was, here's Haran here, right? They're trying to recapture this city, but the Egyptian army cannot get fast enough because it's hung up here in Judea, and so the Assyrians fight the Babylonians by themselves. Making sense? Yes, slaughter. The Babylonians were led by the crown prince Nebuchadnezzar II, who had a large, basically a large, what do you call them, when you hire mercenaries with him. This army of Babylonians marched a city on the Euphrates that was a stronghold and defeated it. The great Mesopotamian king of Assyria ceased to exist as an independent entity after the Egyptians lost all their territories to Syria. Ultimately, the Egyptians and Babylonians would continue to fight until the Persians conquered them all. All right, let me sum this up for you. I know we've played around with a lot of figures, and I know it's been a little confusing, but let me just give you a quick timeline. Big empires. Assyrians control everything, everything. Little Egypt is actually a vassal state of the Assyrian Empire. That's how great Assyria is. Assyria is this huge world power. But what happened was internal conflict. Brothers start to fight brothers. Mothers start to put their sons against their half-brothers. And the empire begins to crumble within because of civil war. And as a consequence of that, when the main power is weakened, the other powers think they can strike. And so the Babylonian Empire thinks this is a time now when we can turn and we can get our independence. But while that's happening, our hyenas, everything's pretty stable, actually. They come down and they start raiding when there's weakness. And they stir up the pot in the Egyptians. And the Egyptians are now mad. So the Egyptians ally themselves with the Assyrians now in hopes of crushing this Babylonian Empire. Remember, Egypt is a vassal state of Assyria. These two empires are working together. And the Babylonians are trying to exert control against them. And the Egyptians and the Assyrians keep pushing against Babylon. But a series of critical events actually slow them down. The Egyptians aren't willing to get too far from home. They stay on the western side of the Tigris on one occasion. On the next occasion, they go back and they try again. They're caught up in Israel. Israel plays a critical role in this story. And so they can't get there. And eventually the Babylonian Empire just grows from strength to strength. And it gets helped by the Median Empire. We begin to get this new superpower. Sorry, not the Median Empire. Basically, their access here. And they start growing and growing and growing. And Babylon really doesn't care about Egypt. They push back as far as basically the Nile Delta, and that bottles Egypt, because Egypt falls into disarray. But they're able then to conquer and push and push and push against, and they defeat the Assyrians. They crushed two major cities. One is the political capital and one is the religious capital. Because when the political capital fell, they fled to the religious capital. And the Babylonians are able to slaughter them. Now, we don't know how they slaughtered them, but what we do know is that the flooding of the river had something to do with it, which speaks of in our text. Did my video stop videoing? Sorry, folks. I got a black background here.
Cannibal left.
Yeah.
All the kings got killed.
Taking on water.
Oh, there we go. It's back.
Stop for 6 seconds.
And the fall of the Syrian Empire was a combination of internal fighting, political alliances, and disruptions. The disruption of the Judean kingdoms, the disruption of the Scythian kingdoms as well, playing a role in it. Now think about how big a territory this is. It's relative, it's the Middle East, right?
It's only miles of water.
Yeah. And think about the tens of thousands of people that are involved in this. These armies are, not by today's standards, they're small, but by the standards of the day, they're quite large. And the Assyrian army is an Iron Age people, right? They're the strongest military in the world. And into all this chaos, I hope you feel somewhat chaotic tonight. Into all this chaos of kings and princes and armies and cities and places and towns and travel, who's orchestrating it? God Almighty, exactly. God is taking these people, moving this empire here, putting this king here, putting here, gets this. And along comes the prophet, a long time before it says, and you know what? God's going to destroy the Assyrians. And the whole world went, you got to be kidding. They're the most powerful people on earth. They have iron weapons and chariots. Nobody can destroy the Assyrians. Now we look at it from this side of history, and I go, well, I can explain to you how it happened. I can tell you about the Assyrians, the Scythians, the Babylonians. I can give you the logic, internal politics, brother against brother, political rivals, civil war. But what am I only doing is explaining how God worked. I'm just putting the face on the mystery. The mystery of how God orchestrated all these series of events so that the Syrian Empire would fall. And then uprose, remember, what's the next empire after A? B, Babylon. And the Babylonian Empire would rise, and the whole world would say, and the prophets would come and say, Babylon's going to fall. And the whole world would go, and along came the Persian Empire. And the Persian Empire grew to a great extent and wiped out the Babylonians. Well, it was interesting. There was a river flowing underneath Babylon that provided all the water, and they just dammed the river up north of it. And then when the water ran, it was a dry riverbed. They waited in the hot sun, and then the armies just walked under the wall. Mm-hmm. Good engineering.
Smart.
Yeah, smart engineering. Eh? They just walked under, popped up. They just climbed up the banks and killed everybody.
Hands up.
Yeah, hands off. Sorry. So this great empire of the Persians comes along. And the Persian Empire is unstoppable. This is going to get boring, by the way, and repetitive. The Persian Empire is unstoppable. And the prophets come along and say, Daniel especially, says, oh, you're going to fall. And everybody goes, no, he believes it. So then along comes the Persians, and then comes Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great, he comes along, he conquers everybody. Greece, northern Greece, Turkey.
No,
He was a Greek. Well, he was actually not a Greek, but he conquers the Greek states first.
So the Persian.
No, he is at the little country north of Greece, just a little tiny country north of Greece. I forget what he was. Macedonian? Yeah, I think he's a Macedonian. And he conquers that. Then he keeps going across. No, that's our fire. He conquers Turkey. He conquers all the way to India. And he weeps when there's no more worlds to conquer, as the legend has it. One of the great stories about Alexander the Great was he had come to a great city, and the city was perched on the edge of a cliff. You could see the edge. And he walks up with his little bodyguard, and he says to the king of the city, surrender! And they all laugh. They say, what, you and these 12 guys? And he says, no, surrender. They say, oh, chuckle. So he says to the 12, to his bodyguard, walk off the cliff. And the 12 of them walk off and commit suicide. And the city surrenders. It says, anybody who commands such loyalty commands our loyalty. These are the legends of Alexander the Great, right? So now we get the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Persians, and the Greeks, and the whole world thinks you can't stop the Greeks because it's Alexander. Alexander dies in a drunken situation. Things happen. He dies at the age of 33. And his empire falls into ruin. And we get the Maccabees, and we get the division, we get Ptolemy, we get the great Battle of Raphi, where the first time in history, Indian elephants and African elephants are in the same fight. You know, we have these two kings, one from the Egyptian African side, and the other brings their armies from the Indian side. And on the battles at the plains of Raphi, we have the first battle in history of elephant versus elephant. If you're a geek, this is exciting stuff, right? It's like tanks for the first time, right? And the great battle of Raphi. So we get all these stories, and people think, oh, I get it, but it falls apart. And then, farther to the west, watching the whole thing, is who? The Romans. They're watching everything. Dun, 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 dun. And then they come along, and they wipe everybody out. They conquer everybody. For centuries and centuries and centuries, the Roman Empire is unstoppable. No one in history can stop the Romans. They just can't. Anybody they feel like, whether it's in the north, in the cold climate of northern England, or in the south in the desert, their armies are capable enough to stop. They defeat Hannibal's elephants. And the way they do that, there are two ways they defeat them. They crafted giant spikes, like, remember jacks? And they just spread them on the ground by the hundreds. And when the elephants walked, ouch, ouch, ouch. And then they would take herds of pigs, and they would cover them with oil and tar, and light them on fire, and send flaming pigs into the elephants. And then, of course, the elephants...
Did that with a mouse once.
Yeah.
But by accident, right, Doug?
No.
No, you lit a mouse on fire. Did it...
Kind of like an ether, wasn't it?
Drones will do things, Joe.
Yeah, that's true. Being alone will make you do funny things. So, this army falls. And the whole time, you know, and then the Roman Empire eventually will fall. And the Roman Empire, sorry, I got to track, we're almost done. The Roman Empire is replaced by the Holy Roman Empire, which is under the Franks, which today are the French, right? And the king of the Holy Roman Empire are the Germans, and they rise up to power, right? Well, then we get into World War II and all this stuff, and then they fall. And meanwhile, over here, there's another empire called America, which, you know, isn't in the Bible, but this other great empire gets fallen. And all these empires, what are they doing? Falling. And God's in control of each story. These empires that no one thought could be defeated. You know, in 1980s, we looked at the Russians and went, oh, they're going to conquer the world. You know, we're all terrified. You know, they got nuclear weapons and stuff. And now today we look at the Russians. They're falling apart. You know, the great is falling apart. And always, like a blood red line running through each of these empires is God's plan for history. And God orchestrates his history through his prophets. Scripture says God does nothing without telling his prophets. And he orchestrates, and he comes along. And eventually, so now we look at the world and we think it's in chaos. It's terrifying. There's this and there's this. There's climate change and there's drought. Don't you think the Assyrians and the Babylonians thought the same thing? It's just chaos and ruin. But it wasn't. It was God's plan to orchestrate his fullness of his. And so what looks like chaos right now is reality. God's orchestrated plan to slowly weave the nations together to bring all things to fulfillment under his Son. And all the stuff in the book of Revelation that's yet to happen is not chaos either. Empires will rise and fall, the mark of the beast, and the 200 million man army from the east, and all that stuff, right? But my point tonight is that this looks like chaos on the outside. When June was in my office, he looked around and he said, "This is organized chaos." He said, "You know where everything is?" I said, yes. He said, "It's organized chaos." And we look at the world around us and we fear the chaos. But it's not. What is it? It's God's orchestration. To the finest, Nebuchadnezzar and Psalmtech, there's always method. In midst of the madness, there is the master's method. Oh, that would preach, Dylan. In the midst of the madness, there's always the master's methods. Pulling things. And I think often in our own lives, too, we see chaos, right? And I say, no, this is God at work. God works all things together for the good, for those who love him and called according to his purposes, making us more and more and more Christ-like. So, in the midst of our chaos, there's the assurance of the blood-red line of God's control. In the midst of political, geopolitical, and economic, do you think God knew COVID was coming?
Oh,
Yeah, I don't think it was a surprise. Man, that caught me off guard. I didn't, those Chinese bats, I didn't pay attention to them, I better play catch up,
You should look
Yeah, that's right, I should have talked to the Chinese about that. No, I don't know if it's Chinese bats or not, but it wasn't. It was all part of God's plan. So, in the midst of, if I could do this, in the midst of all the chaos,
Can we all?
you can all do that. There is no chaos. It is God's divine plan, spoken through the prophets, to fulfill his purposes. All right, I hope that was a satisfactory conclusion. Next Wednesday, we won't be having study. I have to go to Maple Creek for Thursday and Friday, which means I'm losing 2 days. So I need Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday to get ready for Sunday and a few other, or Tuesday and Wednesday. Does that make sense? It's all clear up here.
Just no Bible study.
No Bible study, because I'm off to Maple Creek. Staying at the gorgeous Maple Creek Motel. $69 a night, no, $66 a night. She's a beauty.
You better make your own